Hi, I'm Mitch Maley and welcome to another edition of Punk Rock Politics. Sean Worsley is a disabled veteran with a traumatic brain injury and PTSD, both of which he suffered during deployment to Iraq. Like many veterans who live in states where it is legal, Sean was prescribed medical cannabis as a treatment for his conditions. Sean and his wife Ebony were driving through Alabama on the way to visit his grandmother in North Carolina back in 2016, hoping to help her repair her home, which had been damaged by a hurricane. When Ebony stopped for gas, a police officer approached their vehicle, complaining that the music coming from the car stereo was too loud. The officer claimed to smell an odor of cannabis and asked to search the automobile. The couple, acknowledging that Sean only possessed legally obtained, medically prescribed cannabis, consented to the search. However, Alabama is one of many states that not only does not allow cannabis to be prescribed as medicine, but also fails to recognize its legal medical use elsewhere. Sean was placed in handcuffs and taken to jail for possession of a controlled substance, which is usually a Class D offense requiring no jail time. However, the arresting officer determined that Sean's possession of his medical cannabis was not for his personal use, elevating it to a Class C possession charge. Despite suffering from cognitive impairment from his brain injury, Sean was allowed to enter a plea deal calling for 60 months probation without legal representation in the room, a deal he says was coerced with a threat of being kept in Alabama to do jail time. The disabled vet was levied thousands of dollars in fines and mandated drug rehab for his medical cannabis use, making the family's already shaky financial situation even more precarious when his probation was transferred to his home state of Arizona. Sean and his wife wound up living out of their car at one point, and one of the costs he wound up cutting was the $250 annual renewal charge for his medical cannabis permit in Arizona. And when he was later found in possession of medical cannabis but without a valid permit, he was charged in Arizona. Alabama then inconceivably ordered Worsley remanded there for violating his probation and sentenced him to 5 years in prison, which he currently faces. To make matters worse, sentencing reforms passed in Alabama before Worsley had been arrested but were not in effect at the time of his booking would have prevented him from facing jail time. Yet, when he was arrested in a different state on a possession charge more than 3 years later, that didn't cause Alabama officials to exercise the common sense of not returning him to the state over the probation violation. Now, it would rightfully seem absurd to think that you could be prescribed, say, pain pills in one state and then thrown in jail in another for merely possessing them. But that's exactly what's happening with medical cannabis, and it's all because Congress has failed to take up the issue and pass legislation directly addressing its use. In fact, Congress hasn't even addressed the fact that cannabis possession is still a federal crime, which has hampered legitimate businesses through issues like payment processing and banking, for which there are very limited services, precisely because companies fear becoming legally entangled should they transact with such gray area businesses that are legal in some instances, illegal in others. With no less than 33 states having legalized medical cannabis, millions of Americans, including a large number of disabled vets, use medical cannabis as a safe and effective alternative to opioids and other addictive and otherwise problematic pharmaceuticals. It is inconceivable that they should have to risk their liberty in order to move freely within our United States while maintaining access to their prescribed treatments. Furthermore, 11 U.S. states have now legalized and regulated the recreational use of cannabis, while 26 more have decriminalized possessing cannabis, meaning that while its sale remains illegal, putting people in jail for possessing it has become a thing of the past. Nonetheless, U.S. prisons still hold hundreds of thousands of Americans who were charged with cannabis possession before states began reforming their laws. The United States was obviously very slow in modernizing its backward approach to a substance that inarguably does less societal harm than alcohol, which remains a celebrated inebriant in our culture despite causing infinitely more social problems. As a result, many Americans are falling through the cracks as reforms continue to creep along at a glacial pace. It's past time for Congress to stop kicking the issue to the courts and the individual states and pass comprehensive reform of federal laws and regulations regarding cannabis. If you agree, contract your representatives in Congress and let them know your position. Meanwhile, if you want to help Sean Worsley, We've got a link to his family's GoFundMe page at our site where you can contribute to his legal defense. I'm Mitch Maley, and that's it for this episode of Punk Rock Politics, but you can always get more at punkrockpolitics.com.